Okay, so what you're looking at here, I think Ryan showed similar pictures. So these are tropical cyclone tracks. In the top is observations, and the bottom left is the 1 degree atmospheric model. The bottom right is the 1/4 degree atmospheric model. And I'm really showing you this today because I want to show how important resolution can be. It's really enabling us to be able to look at things that we hadn't been able to look at before, at least with these particular trackers. So you can see that we really do need a higher resolution than the 1 degree in order to even look at tropical cyclones. So we have moved on in our studies, and we're now looking at mid-latitude storms. And so here's a similar plot, just looking at extratropical cyclones. And this is just from 1 year of a model simulation from a present day. We are currently only looking at storms. We've categorized them over the North Atlantic, the North Pacific, and then in the Southern Hemisphere, I might say Southern Ocean sometimes as well. And only over the oceans. There's a particular limitation with the tracking software that we're using, combined with the way the model does surface pressure, that we can't yet look at these over land, but we're hoping to maybe use a different metric in order to calculate the mid-latitude storms over land. So to give out the punchline, very much like tropical cyclones, we're finding that the future appears to have fewer storms, mid-latitude storms, than the present day. So what you're looking at here are storm counts on the y-axis, and then each one of these boxes is a different ensemble member from the simulations that we did. Blue and green are present day, and red and purple are future. If anybody's interested in the different types of simulations, which the colors indicate, I can talk to you more afterward. But you can see this global signal is really driven by what's happening in the Southern Hemisphere and in the Atlantic. And the Pacific isn't really showing much difference between future number of storms and present day. And you'll see why on this slide. So this is what we call track density. It's the average hours per year that a storm spends in a 4x4 grid box. On the top here is present day. The middle is the future high warming scenario. And then the bottom is the difference between the two. So even between these two plots, you can see in the storm track regions that there's a decrease in the future from present day. And you can also see that in this plot. But in the Pacific, what seems to be happening, you do have a decrease in maybe the heart of the storm track region, but there might be some kind of a shift in the storm track as well. So you're having more storms in other regions of the Pacific. And that's why the total storm count doesn't seem to change. We haven't really investigated this too much. That's something on our list. So we wanted to figure out what was going on. There must be, we assume, something with stability in the atmosphere in the future that was causing it to have future storms. So mid-latitude storms depend on baroclinic instability. And so as a measure of that instability, we calculated the ED growth rate. So the higher the number of the ED growth rate, the more instability there is in the atmosphere. And so on the top here is present day, and the bottom is future. So if you compare these storm track regions between the two, you can see that the numbers here have decreased in the future. And so this is indicating a more stable atmosphere in the future than in the present day. Okay, so this too is a video, but I'm not going to try to play it. So I'll just go on. Yeah, I'll go on to the next slide and just show you what I wanted you to see from that animation. So what we're going to do now in the next couple slides is look at this 10th degree ocean. So now we're seeing what impacts we can have from a very high resolution ocean. And two of the things that we're pointing out here, this one, we have cold air outbreaks. And if you were to see the animation, you would see this area here really light up. And what the kind of cloud-looking things are is latent heat flux in the atmosphere. And then the coloring underneath is the sea surface temperature from the ocean. And what you see is, when in the video, it would have been comparing the 1 degree model to the 1/4 degree model coupled to the 10th degree ocean. And you see a lot more structure in the ocean. So you can see instability waves that move through the tropics in the sea surface temperature. You would also get peaks at meanders in the Gulf Stream. And that's what you're seeing here, is the impact of the high resolution ocean on the atmosphere through latent heat flux. You can see these kind of wavy things up here, and that's because of the meanders of the Gulf Stream. And so that's really interesting that we're able to get that influence on the atmosphere. And then another thing that Ryan talked about, this is a cold wake left behind in the ocean from a tropical cyclone that zipped through the area. We're just now starting to look at this 10th degree ocean simulations, so these are just really exciting features that we've seen that we haven't yet investigated. Another thing that we're really excited about with the 10th degree ocean is the impact potentially on the atmospheric rivers. And so this too would have been a video. But on the left-hand side, what you're seeing, so this is total precipitable water again in the atmosphere. On the left is the 1 degree ocean model, and on the right is the 10th degree ocean model. And you see that the 1 degree has a much smoother structure, whereas it looks like there's a lot more structure, kind of more noise, things being communicated to the atmosphere in the 10th degree. And we think that this is information from ocean eddies that we're now resolving with the 10th degree model that are getting communicated to the atmosphere. And so this is another exciting thing that we want to further investigate. And so another thing that we've sort of picked out with this particular 10th degree simulation are smaller scale features like what I've already been talking about, but also this is a warming trend off the northeast coast of North America. And this is just an example of how we can have smaller scale features that we weren't able to see or don't see yet in coarser model resolutions that we are resolving in the high resolution. So this comes from observations, and this is the trends in the ocean sea surface temperature over about the last 30 years. And so you can see there's really this kind of hotspot of warming in this region off of North America, and then this is just a trend over an average over that area. So here's comparing the nominal 1 degree model, so 1 degree atmosphere, 1 degree ocean, to the 1 degree, I think that should be 1/4 degree atmosphere, 10th degree ocean. And you can see that the 1 degree model doesn't pick up on that warming, whereas the simulation we have with the high resolution is. Now there are a couple of caveats here. This 1 degree is an ensemble mean from a 40-member ensemble of the 1 degree model. However, we did look at trends in all 40 of those members, and only one of them showed some warming in this region. Whereas we have this one simulation, this is kind of what Ryan was saying, all our eggs are in one basket here. This is our best guess because we just computationally can't afford to run these high resolution simulations. But we do have reason to believe that this feature would be more represented in the high resolution because there was a study done at the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory with their high resolution ocean. And they found that the warming in this region is due to being able to resolve the Labrador Sea Current, and the Labrador Sea Current comes along and curves around the tip of Greenland, and that seems to not be represented in the 1 degree model, whereas it is in the 10th degree model, and it is in our simulations as well. So what happens, according to their study, is that the circulation of the Labrador Sea coming down actually slows down in the future, and so that's why you don't get as much cold water coming into that region, which explains the warming there. Okay, so now I'm going to move to even higher resolution, and these are simulations done with the WRF model, and it's being forced with different boundary conditions from different fully coupled global climate simulations. One of them is the CESM, that's this box down here. So I'm showing you results from 4 different simulations using 4 different types of boundary conditions. And this was run using present day conditions and then a moderate warming scenario, or the RCP 4.5 scenario, and then the high warming scenario that we've looked at in previous slides, the RCP 8.5. And then what you're looking at here are the number of days that exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit per year minus in either the RCP 4.5 or 8.5 minus the present day. So this would be the number of additional years per day that you might see under these different warming scenarios. And so you can see places like the Northeast US have maybe, less than 6 additional days in the 4.5 scenario, whereas when you go to the high warming scenario, when you go to the high warming scenario, that kind of remains the same. But there are really big impacts in other parts of the country. So if we look at the Southeast, which kind of seems to be robust in all 4 of these, we have maybe 6 to 8 additional days of warming under the moderate scenario, whereas when we look in the high warming scenario, it's like 40 or 50 additional days. So you're talking 1 or 2 months more where you have days above 95 degrees in the high warming scenario. So this is pretty significant. This also means, so in present day, most of those 95-degree days or higher occur in the June, July, August time frame. So with an additional 1 to 2 months, summer might not just be between June, July, and August. So just one more plot from this particular study. These are showing PDFs of the maximum temperature. I'm only showing you from one model now, so this is from the model that was forced with the CESM boundary condition. And we're looking at different regions, the Midwest, Northeast, Southeast. And the different lines here, the black is the historical simulation, the red is observations, the purple is that moderate warming scenario, and the blue is the high warming scenario. And so you can see that as you go to, and they're all normalized to about the mean and standard deviation of the historical simulation. So on the x-axis here, this is the number of standard deviations away from that historical simulation. And so we see shifts in the means with both the moderate and the high warming scenarios. This happens to be data from the summer, and so the southern parts of the country are actually being impacted more. You have a larger shift. If we were looking at the winter time, then the northern areas would actually have more of a shift. But what's really kind of eye-opening is if you were to map the 95th percentile from the historical simulation and then say what would one of those events be in one of the future scenarios. With the high warming scenario, a 95th percentile event would now be a 39% event. And so this actually means that you're 12 times more likely to have a day above 95 degrees under that scenario than you would in present day. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a list of publications. We mostly have a lot of our tropical cyclone work published, and there's one from a student at University of Illinois who was looking at these, the WRF scenarios over the United States. And so I hope, what I really wanted to show you all is what high resolution is able to get us and the types of studies that we're able to do with these high resolutions. And it's true that we really couldn't do these high resolution simulations if we didn't have resources like Blue Waters. So thank you.